What is good, y'all? It's your boy Kia Orion, the man who is obsessed with making dope music and teaching you how to make your own. And in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to make vocals like this.
Me and you, we'll do it different, it's just me and you. I love you different, it's just me and you.
If that sounds dope to you, stick around and we're going to show you exactly how to do it, all the knobs and switches that you have to tweak in order to make it happen. But if you want to get the template, you can check it out in the description below. I'll have that posted up so that way you can just buy it if you don't want to worry about it and just throw it on, make your vocals sound dope. Without further ado, let's jump into the computer and I'll show you exactly what it takes to make this sound. See you there. All right, so let's jump into this Justin Bieber type vocal template. And again, if you want to check out more about this template, you can get all of the information in the description below. But if you don't want to buy it, I'm going to teach you exactly how to make it yourself. And this is all with the Waves Gold bundle plugins, mostly, except for one plugin. But if you don't have Waves Gold Bundle, if you don't have Waves plugins, don't worry about it. You can do all of this with your stock plugins, I promise you. So here's the deal. I can't play the Justin Bieber song Love You Different because of copyright, and he'd take my video down and come after me, and he has much better lawyers than I do. I guarantee that. But what I can do is have you go play that on your own and then take a listen to this. So this is my version, my remix of his song Love You Different.
Me and you, we'll do it different, it's just me and you. I love you different, it's just me and you. Yeah, we'll do it different.
So that's kind of the vibe that I was going for. I remade the beat, kind of had my own spin to it, and then obviously I wrote my own song, my own version, and tried to achieve the vocals as best as I could to kind of get that Justin Bieber vibe. So that's kind of the overview of the track. That's what it looks like. This is the overall template that I'll show you that we're working with. As usual, you're gonna need a little auto-tune. It's gonna be something like this, all these macros and stuff built out. So if that looks fun to you, you wanna learn how to build your own Justin Bieber vocals, let's jump into this. When it comes to mixing vocals, the thing that I always preach is control first. So that's the first thing that I'm going to jump into anytime I'm mixing a vocal. As well, if you see this utility, this is just a little bit of gain staging that I did on the vocal. Don't worry about that. Hopefully your vocals you recorded in at the right level. I recorded these in a little bit soft, so that's why I'm just adding a little bit of gain to them. Don't worry about it. Next thing you're going to need is some, you don't need it. You're probably a better singer than I am. Next thing I am going to need is some auto-tune. My auto-tune settings are as follows. I use auto-tune EFX. Here's the low male input type. I had this is a pretty fast retune speed, and the style I do soft EFX. Hard EFX is more like T-Pain. They're still definitely there, but just not as much. This is my song is in the key of F minor, the one that I made. So those are the auto tune settings. If you have auto tune or something like that, so you tune the vocal, of course. And so I want you to hear what this vocal sounds like without the template and then with the template. So this is without it.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of that same old thing.
Pretty whack. So it sounds to me when I hear that it's really boxy. The T's are jumping out to me. It needs a lot of work. And so oftentimes when I see these really professional vocal videos done, the guys that are working on them have really good recorded vocals coming in. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us out there, myself included, we record from the bedroom. So we don't have amazing vocals coming in, but you can take a pretty crappy vocal and get it to sound good. I also have a lot more information on like how to record good vocals, and that'll probably be in the description below as well. But you can only do so much from your bedroom. So here's the deal. This is, I'll walk you through kind of one at a time what each of these is doing. And these macros that I've put out here for you. But like I said, the first thing you want to do is control the vocal and get out the stuff that makes it sound kind of crappy. So this first step is going to be very dependent on what your vocal sounds like. So if you buy my template, this is this is a little bit more specific to my vocal. This is something that you're just going to want to tweak, make sure it sounds good for yours. But pretty much what I've done here is, let's A/B this back and forth, is I've started to tackle the pain frequencies.
You ain't used to different angles. You ain't used to different angles.
So you can tell I've taken out a lot of the kind of boxiness, a lot of the low end. That's why I did this low cut. There's some stuff, the frequencies in here, always around like the 4 to 5K range that ends up just jumping out at me. So I wanted to control that. So that's the first thing. First step in controlling the vocal. This isn't all the EQ, but this is just the first piece of the EQ. And then the second piece of the EQ, and what I did was I also mapped this first piece, this number one, to the low cut over here to this first macro because, oops, if we bring this down here, you'll see your voice is going to be different than mine. So you're going to just want to play around with this, make sure that you cut out what works for your voice. And then the next piece of the EQ that we're handling is with this SSL channel. We're also doing a little bit of compression here, but I'm going to save that for a second. So I'm going to bypass the compression just so you hear the EQ that I did with this plugin. Now, if you don't, this is the only plugin not in the Waves Gold bundle. SSL. If you don't have this one, don't worry about it. You can do this with any other EQ, but I was just running out of knobs on this Q10, so I wanted to shape it more with this one. And what this is, if you don't know about the SSL, this is your EQ on this kind of left side, and this is going to be your compression and your gate and stuff over here. So this is without this EQ on.
You ain't used to different angles.
This is with the EQ.
You ain't used to different angles.
So you can tell I'm even taking out more of the boxy stuff. It's starting to sound even more thin, but I'm not really worried about it because I'm gonna beef it up a little bit later on. And so I'm taking out, and this is the very low end, taking out a decent amount, around, what is that, 380 hertz. I'm taking out some, again, all this is doing right now is I'm just cutting. I'm still cutting, controlling, taking out the stuff I don't like. And this kind of low mids, taking about 3 at around 1.5. High mids, taking around 2 at around 4.5, somewhere in there. And then what is that? Barely a decibel of boosting for a little bit of like shine up at this tie in, but this is really irrelevant. And that's kind of the main bread and butter of the control of the vocal is going from this.
You ain't used to different angles.
To this.
You ain't used to different angles.
We're really taking out of the boxy stuff, and then I'm going to start to tackle the really bitey kind of S's and T's soon, and add a little bit of compression to bring up some of the low mids, bring some of the body back that we lost. If you've seen any of my tutorials before, you know that I'm into DS and compress. So the next thing we're going to do is add a little bit of compression here, and this is what I've added over here to this macro for you. If you buy the template, this is the SSL comp, so that you know that this is the SSL compressor. Excuse me. And so this is this threshold piece. That if you push this, you can get some really interesting sounds, but this is a pretty aggressive compressor. So I sometimes like to push this. Here, let's bring it down so you can see that it's turning the knob. I like to push this, like, you can push this pretty hard if you want. Depends on how aggressive you want it. But I like to shoot for maybe around like -3. That's what these lights are going to tell you, around -3 dB gain reduction on the vocal, just for this first one, just a little bit of control on the compressor.
You ain't used to different angles.
So you can see this lighten up.
You get tired of the same old thing.
Just a little bit. And then the next piece is this deesser, which I've added over here because your S's are going to be, it depends on your vocal. So that's why you want this to be able to adjust it. What this does is it's pretty much telling this is pretty much just a compressor, a very specified compressor at this frequency. And it's telling it, I want it to decompress however much you set it to on that one part. So I can tell those S's are starting to jump out at me already. So
you ain't used to different angles.
Let's turn that on. That helps.
You ain't used to different angles.
So it's maybe a little bit too much.
You get tired of the same old thing. You ain't used to different angles.
There you go.
You get tired of
like that T, boom. That's something that it's really jumping out at you if this isn't on. And so that's kind of this next piece of it was adding still a little bit more control, a little bit of compression, still just kind of we're starting to fit this vocal into the beat. And again, I'm kind of break my own rules here. You want to, as soon as you can, start playing your vocals back in with the beat, because especially when you start adding compression to it, it's going to sound different when it's playing with the beat than when it's without the beat. So as soon as you can, kind of start getting this initial EQ, when you start adding some compression and these next EQs and next steps, you want to make sure that you're playing the beat along with it. So that way it's it's a general rule of thumb that I like to use, so that way you can start to fit the vocal in with the beat rather than creating this perfect vocal and then you play back in the beat and it sounds kind of out of whack. So that's kind of the de-ess and compress, continuing to control this vocal, jumping into the next part. Let's see what the next piece was.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old thing.
Let's turn the doubles off. Okay, so this next piece then we're going to do is I'm doing another EQ here. And because I still felt like there was too much kind of boxy, there were a few more frequencies that were bothering me here. I haven't added this Q10 over here because this is going to be very individual to your voice. So in the template, whether you buy it or you build it, just for this other EQ, you can kind of go a little bit more crazy with these. These were just cuts. I'm still continuing to control. These are just little things that jumped out at me I didn't like still.
You ain't used to different angles.
All right, and then the next piece is this compressor. This is the compressor that I have to kind of glue things together, which is why I've labeled it glue. And what the glue is this is definitely one that you're going to want to play back with the beat, because this one is directly contingent on how it glues with the beat. That's why it's called glue. And what the glue is pretty much the attack and how fast this compressor is coming in. Again, this isn't a ton of compression. You'll want to dial this in a little bit to your voice, how much you want it to be compressing. I think I have it coming in around negative 3 dB gain reduction.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old thing.
Yeah, so this is one that is going to be dependent on you, which is why I put the macro over here. And so for your attack, these settings also, if you're building this, it's ARC, opto, and warm. This threshold, this is dependent on, again, how loud your vocal is.
You ain't used to different
right? So that would be way too much compression, but
you ain't used to different angles.
If the threshold is too high, it's not doing anything. So I think I have it in around like,
you ain't used to different angles.
I think I want it like maybe around like here.
You get tired of the same old thing. Try to fit you into cages.
And I'm bringing back a little bit of gain. Again, with these compressors, you want to kind of match the gain. So hopefully with this off and on, it sounds relatively similar.
You ain't used to different angles. You ain't used to different angles.
Because these compressors can kind of, they can trick you because they make it sound louder, so you think it sounds better. So often you want to just make sure that you're kind of matching the gain of your compressor, bringing that in. So that's what the glue does. One kind of final compressor to build it, build the vocal into the beat, depending on where you're at in the track. And then I still felt like this is more compression, and this one is a game changer. You're going to notice this one a lot. I love this C4, C6, this multi-band compressor. I often like to maybe push some highs with this, but I'm not going to jump into it too much. Pretty much what I'm doing with this C4 is, as you can tell, these two are bypassed. All this is a multi-band compressor, meaning each one of these bands is being compressed individually, rather than this arc compressor, which is compressing everything the same. So here, because it's still sounding boxy to me, check this out. So what I'm doing is each one of these is like a mini arc compressor. So you have your own little threshold, your own little gain reduction, range, attack, and release. I'm really tackling these low frequencies again. So check this out.
You ain't used to different angles.
Because when I was listening to Bieber's vocals, I found that there was a lot there. There's not a lot of low end. They don't feel thin per se, but they feel kind of like they feel like they aren't really jumping out. There's not a lot of like high end. They aren't super like bitey, but they aren't really. He has relatively high voice, soft voice, and so it just felt like it fit really neatly in this kind of like this range, this kind of like kind of mid-range. It was all felt very controlled. So I wanted to continue to control it. Mine still felt a little bit dynamic. So that's what I'm doing here. Check this out.
You ain't used to different angles. You ain't used to different angles.
You can feel that control. It feels like it's really kind of grabbing that vocal. And so if you look at these,
you ain't used to different angles.
Really fast attack and pretty fast release on this. I wasn't playing around controlling on this compressor. So that's kind of the compression piece. The rest of the control, now that the vocal to me sounds pretty good dry, I want to start getting those effects that I heard in the Justin Bieber track. We get into the fun part. So this was when I wanted to really craft the vocal so it sounded like Biebs. And so this first one is an H delay at about an eighth note delay. And this one I don't have mapped over to a macro because this eighth delay, you'll want to dial this into taste. I also have this lo-fi enabled, analog off, all the way dry wet, because what this is working on is a parallel split. So if you're working in waves, this Wave Studio Rack, you're going to want to add a parallel split. If you're not working in waves, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add these in a way that these are buses or sends, like return tracks. So here you're going to want to say add a return track, and that's what these are kind of working on as return tracks. But this isn't a tutorial about return tracks, but that's pretty much how these are working, meaning these aren't all completely dry signals. These are all very wet signals, which then I'm mixing into the main vocal just a little bit. You'll see what I mean. So this first one is, and let's turn these off, go by one at a time, show you what we did here. First one is an H delay at about 1/8. And I'm going to solo so you can kind of hear what is going on.
You ain't used to different angles.
You hear it's almost like a slapback delay because it's short, so it's just a little bit, but once you start adding other stuff, it kind of starts to just beef up the vocal a little bit. Then this is the 16th note delay, and this one I have over here mapped to this macro. So the way that I recommend using this template, and if you're building it yourself and you're mapping this out, is start exaggerated and then dial it back in. And so this one is the 16th note, or excuse me, it's the 4th note. Sorry about that. And same, almost exact settings as the 8th note delay. Lo-fi, analog off, totally dry wet. And a little bit of the highs kind of taken out here. And so you're going to want to go balls to the wall and then dial it back.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old thing. Try to fit you into cages. Fly too high, they clip those angel wings. You ain't used to different angles.
There we go, somewhere around in there. So again, dial that in to taste whatever works for you. And I got this to kind of sound like Bieber, where this was definitely noticeable on his vocals, at least in the track "Love You Different," the one that I kind of modeled this after. This short verb is an R verb. It's a plate one. If you've seen any of my stuff, you know I love the plate verbs from, or just plate reverbs in general, but I like this plate verb from R verb. This is kind of what it is. Size all the way. Time is pretty short. A little bit of the EQ going on here for this reverb, but this is what this one sounds. This one pretty much puts the vocal in a space. It puts it so it sounds like it's actually in a room.
You ain't used to different angles.
Spaceship. So this, I love this one. So check this out. Let's dial this in.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old thing. Try to fit you into cages. Fly too high, they clip those angel wings. You ain't used to different angles.
You want to, it's gonna kind of like widen the vocal, but you don't want to sound like you're in a spaceship. So that's kind of the short verb. I really like having a plate verb just to kind of put the vocals in a space. This is what it sounds like without it.
You ain't used to different angles.
This is with it.
You ain't used to different angles.
Sounds subtle. Hope you're listening in headphones. This next one is, so that's what I mean. All of these are small, kind of subtle things, but they all add up to be your final vocal. It's not one of these is going to be the game changer. It's a bunch of these all kind of added together. This next one is the long verb. Same one, R verb, except this one it's a chamber type verb. A little bit longer on the time, size, a little bit of pre-delay. You can dial these into taste. And what this one is, starts to give you that starts to sound a little bit more professional. The vocals start to take up a little bit more space.
You ain't used to different angles.
Too much?
You get tired of the same old thing. Try to fit you into cages. Fly too high, they clip those angel wings. You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old thing.
So as you can tell, now they're subtle, but you can start to hear a little bit of the delay, a little bit of the reverb working together. If you want a brighter reverb, I added this EQ6 here with the lows cut and the highs boosted. This is going to give you a really bright kind of sound. I like this normally. I didn't find like Bieber had a super bright reverb, so I'm not engaging it in the template, but I wanted to have it there for you in case you wanted to use it yourself.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old thing. You ain't used to different angles.
So that's up to you. Kind of dial that into taste with your long verb. And then last but not least, these are two things that I have both working. If you look at their dry wet knob over here, both working in tandem on this widener knob. It's a double or two with the direct turned off, because again, we're blending these into our direct signal, so we don't need the direct line. Super simple default preset, didn't even change a thing. And then this meta flanger, which I changed to chorus medium. And here's what these sound like just on their own.
You ain't used to different angles.
Pretty wonky, but if you dial these in, this can sound cool, and it can really help your vocals just start to feel a little bit more like stereo spread.
You ain't used to different angles.
Let's take that off.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old thing. Try to fit you into cages. Fly too high, they clip those angel wings.
I also felt like his vocals had a little bit kind of like flanger action on them. They had some kind of cool wet effects. So that's what I was engaging here for that. So that's kind of this entire piece of the effects is all of that through the widener, the long verb, all of that jazz. And now we'll jump into this last piece. Now that we have all of these effects kind of rocking and rolling, this is what it sounds like up to here without the effects.
You ain't used to different angles.
This is with them.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old.
So you can tell when I say tired, even those T's, they're still bothering me. They're still jumping out. So what I always have at the end of my chain is some sort of other de-esser. This is a simple, if you have any sort of de-esser, throw that on. This is just one that I use from Waves because I like it and I kind of know how it works, how it makes my S's sound. This simple. This is the same as this. It just looks a little bit fancier, but all of these are very much similar, like threshold or frequency, et cetera, et cetera. What I like is this little look ahead function, the detection, so you can tell if you want it to be like just S's or kind of more like S's and T's. I keep it 50-50 wide mode, wide split mode, look ahead. So check this out.
You ain't used to different angles.
When you see the green, that's pretty much, that is when it's actually triggering. It's telling you, okay, I'm working now. And this is how much it's triggering. So this is you telling it when to trigger, and then this is how much you're triggering it. That's a way to think about it.
You ain't used to different angles.
So this is if we go all the way.
You get tired of the same old thing. Try to fit you into.
Helps if you turn it on.
You ain't used to different angles.
So you can tell I'm super lispy there. So this is when you kind of want to dial it in. I don't like to go super hard on this one because it's the very end of my vocal chain, but I want to just kind of tame everything now that all the effects are there, all the compression's there. I just want to tame every last kind of piece that's poking out, especially when I was listening to Bieber. He had like nothing really poking out. It all felt super kind of controlled, very compressed. So that's what I'm shooting for with this one.
You ain't used to different angles. You get tired of the same old thing. Try to fit you into cages.
And now what we're going to do is I'm going to take it to the hook because that's when I can tell things are a little bit louder. And again, I want to make sure that I'm not just listening to this one part. As I'm adding effects, you're kind of going through, finding different parts of your track, making sure that even in the hook, the vocal still sounds good.
Me and you, we'll do it different. It's just me and you. I love you different. It's just me and you. We'll do it different, it's just me and you. Me and you, me and you.
So even there, I feel like I'm like, because when there's more beat, I feel like I'm almost losing some of the reverb. So that's when I'd go in, maybe I'd boost a little reverb or make sure that it sounds good throughout the whole track. Another thing here is that I want to talk about. So you can see over here, these little red points, these little red dots. That means that I'm automating the volume. So at the very end as well of my vocal, I'll go in after I've added the effects and I've gotten some things to sound really good. Sometimes you don't even need to change the effects. Sometimes all you got to do is just add a little bit of volume to certain things in the track or a little less volume and you'll get what you're looking for. That's an important part is that kind of volume automation. Some people kind of ride the vocal. They get a little bit more specific and they'll come in here and change each one of these pieces. But It depends what you kind of want to do. So if we look at just the track volumes, I don't know what is going on here, why I took that down. But as you can tell, this one in this verse, I felt like it was a little bit more dynamic, or maybe there's less beat playing. I'm not sure. But so this verse is actually 1 dB softer, and this one is 1 dB louder, because I guess I was softer in this performance than in this one. So make sure that if you go in, you're like still tweaking effects here and there. It can be a never-ending process. Sometimes just automating some volumes can do the heavy lifting for you. Hope that helps. Again, you can check all of this out, but down in the description below. Get some Bieber type vocals. Hope that you enjoyed that tutorial, learned a thing or two. As always, I'll check you on the next one. Kia Orion, everywhere on social. Hit me up here to help you guys get better. All right, check you in a minute. Thanks again. Peace.